Welcome to this tutorial. So in this tutorial we are going to look at 2025 science, basically chemistry, which came last year. So this is one of the most important topic in your exam, the more concept. So this question came on the more concept. So before I start, don't forget to subscribe, share and comment for more videos like this. Yeah. So to begin, it's saying 4 grams of impure iron 3 oxide react with 600 cubic centimeters of 0.100 mole per cubic decimeter sulfuric acid. Then our first question is asking us to construct a balanced chemical equation for the reaction. So the first question is requiring us to construct a balanced chemical equation. So now you're wondering, how can you write a chemical equation? So writing chemical equation is simple. I've also made a separate video on writing chemical equation. Yeah. So first thing, you need to identify the reactant. What are the reactant that we have? So the first reactant we have is impure iron 3 oxide. So this is our first reactant, which react with sulfuric acid. So at the beginning, first you need to ignore these numbers, because in the equation you won't use the numbers. Yeah. So now that you have identified the reactant, the second stage is you need now to write the chemical symbols for the two reactant. So the first reactant we have is iron. So iron 3 oxide. So what is the chemical symbol for iron 3 oxide? So remember, each atoms has its own valence. Yeah. So here, when we look at iron 3 oxide, we are considering two things. We are considering iron and oxygen. Because for you to form iron oxide, you have to combine iron and oxygen. Yeah. So the first thing you need to write now is iron and oxygen. Yeah. So those are the two things which are found in iron 3 oxide. But remember, here the question is saying iron 3. So which means the valence for iron is what? Is 3, because they have already told you it's iron 3 oxide. Yeah. Then from the periodic table, we know that oxygen is in group what? It is in group 6. So meaning, if it is in group 6, if you subtract, we said that for you to find the valence of non-metal, you have to subtract 8 from the group number. So since oxygen is in group 6, you have to subtract 8 minus 6 to get what? 2. So meaning the valence for oxygen is 2 and the valence for iron is 3. Now that we have the valence for both iron and oxygen, the next step is you need to swap them. So swap the valences. So the valence for oxygen will go to iron, and the valence for iron will go to what? To oxygen. So this is our chemical what? Formula for iron 3 oxide. So remember the steps I've told you. Then the next step is sulfuric acid. So sulfuric acid, this one you need to know it. It's H2SO4. Yeah. So that is the symbol for what? For sulfuric acid. Now, how can we write what? The chemical equation. Yeah. So one thing you need to know is that when you have a metal oxide, what do we mean by a metal oxide? When you have a metal and oxygen reacting together, forming a metal oxide, like this one, there is a formula or there is a principle we follow. So the principle we follow is that when you add a metal oxide plus an acid, you get what? A salt plus water. Yeah. So this is always the principle you should follow. What principle? This one. So whenever you have a metal plus an acid, always you have a salt and water. Yeah. So saying that, we can solve now our first question. So we say that iron, which is iron, reacts with sulfuric acid, then to form what? A salt and water. So how can you pick a salt now from the equation? So the way we pick a salt is by getting the first atom with the last atom. You have iron and like that. Yeah. So this is basically our salt. So remember, we are not done. Remember, the valence for sulfate is what? It's also 2. Then the valence for iron, we said it's 3. So this is our what? Our symbol. Then we say that the other element is what? Water. So once you write like this, meaning you are done, but not done yet. Yeah, you are done writing the chemical equation, but it is not balanced yet. So how can we balance this chemical equation? So the way we can balance this chemical equation is by looking at what elements are not balanced. So for example, here we only have 1 sulfate, but here we have 3 sulfate. So meaning we need to add a 3 here so that we have 3 sulfate, and here we have 3 sulfate. But remember, if we add the 3 here meaning we have 6 what? We have 6 hydrogen, but here we have 2. So meaning we should also add a 3 in front of what? Hydrogen. So now the equation is what? Is balanced. So for the entire video where I show you how to balance and write chemical formulas, be sure to inbox or comment in the comment section. Yeah. So moving on to our next question, which says calculate the mass of the pure oxide that reacted with the acid. So here now we are calculating for the what? The mass of the pure oxide that reacted with the acid. Yeah. So how can we calculate the pure oxide? So now here is where the numbers comes in. So remember the question was saying 4 grams of impure iron 3 oxide reacted with 600 cubic centimeter of 0.11 mole per cubic decimeter of sulfuric acid. So whenever you have mole per decimeter, remember this is what? Concentration. So whenever you have mole per decimeter, it is concentration. Yeah. So step 1, before you start solving, you need to compare the units, as I've been telling you all the time. So remember here we have 600 cubic centimeter. Then here we have decimeter. So meaning first you need to convert this 600 into what? Decimeter, so that the units match. So how do we convert it? So you convert it by dividing it with 1000. So you say 600 divided by 1000 will get what? 0.600 decimeter. Yeah. So once you do this, meaning you have what? You have converted your volume from cubic centimeter to what? Decimeter. Yeah. So once we have converted the volume now to decimeter, we can now calculate the number of moles for what? For sulfuric acid. Remember, this question we are in more concept. The key concept is what? Comparing. So here we compare. So since in our question, what we have been given is for what? For sulfuric acid. So first we need to calculate the number of moles for sulfuric acid, because it is the only compound which we have been given the volume and the concentration. Yeah. So always check for the compound which you have been given all the values. It can either be mass, molar mass, and what? Or other stuff to calculate. They will always give you one compound with full values. So now you say number of moles of what? Sulfuric acid should be equal to concentration multiplied by volume. So this is the formula which we use to calculate the number of moles when we have concentration and volume. Yeah, remember this formula. So the concentration we said it was 0.100, then the volume we found it to be 0.600. So remember, if you haven't converted, your answer will be wrong. So the answer we'll get is 0.0600 moles. Yeah. So our first step is done. We have basically calculated the number of moles of what? Sulfuric acid. But remember, the question is not asking us for the moles of sulfuric acid, but for the mass of what? Pure oxide. So how do we move now from the number of moles to mass of pure oxide? Yeah. So since now we have calculated the number of moles, we have to compare now using the balanced chemical equation. So this is now where you have to use this equation you wrote here. So if this question of yours is wrong, meaning even here your calculation will be wrong. So how do we compare now? So remember, they want what? The mass of what? Of this pure oxide which reacted. So the moles in the chemical equation are the numbers we use to balance. So here, since we don't have a number, meaning it's an invisible 1. Then here we have 3, here we have an invisible 1, here we have 3. So meaning here we have 1 mole of iron 3 oxide reacting with 3 moles of sulfuric acid. So you write here, so you say 1 mole of iron react with 3 moles of what? H2. Yeah. Then how many moles of sulfuric acid will react with this? 0.0600. Then here you put an x. So then you can cross what? Multiply. So we have 3x is equals to 0.0600. Then you divide by 3. Then x will be 0.0200 moles of F2O3. Yeah. So this was step 2. We were calculating now the moles of iron or the moles of the pure oxide which we are told. So now we have the what? The moles. So meaning the only part remaining is now calculating the what? The mass. But for us to calculate the mass, we need also what? The molar mass. So for calculating the molar mass, that's the simple part. So how do we calculate the molar mass of iron 3 oxide? Remember, we are calculating the mass of this compound. Yeah. So you say iron So the molar mass for iron is what? Is 56. But here we have 2. So you say 2 multiplied by 56 plus 3 multiplied by 16. So 16, this is the molar mass for oxygen. Then if you multiply and you add, you get what? 160 grams per mole. So this is basically our molar mass. So that now we have the molar mass and we also have the number of moles. Finally now we can calculate the what? The mass. So how now do we calculate the mass? So the way we calculate the mass is that we say that number of moles is equals to mass over molar mass. But the molar mass and the number of moles we have, so our formula changes to mass is equals to number of moles multiplied by the molar mass. Then the number of moles which we have is 0.02 multiplied by 1/60, which is our molar mass. Then if you multiply the two, you find that your mass will be 3.20 grams. Sorry, my space is small. Yeah, so this is how you solve the question on molar mass when you have been given the volume and the concentration. So this is how you can convert it. So step 1, you convert the volume to decimeter. Step 2, so this is step 1 for those that are joining me now. So step 1, you convert it. Then step 2, you compare the moles. So how do we compare the moles? For us to compare, step 2, after you have converted, step 2 is this one, sorry. You have to calculate now the number of moles of a given compound. In our question, the compound we are given was sulfuric acid. Then after calculating the number of moles, you have to compare them using the balanced chemical equation. Remember, I told you, what are the moles? The moles are the numbers which we use to balance this chemical equation. For example, here it was an invisible one. So we say 1 mole of iron reacts with 3 moles of sulfuric acid. Then you can calculate now the number of moles for iron which reacted with these moles. Because the equation has given us the part of the moles, then we use this to calculate the other moles. Then after I've calculated the moles, you can now calculate the molar mass. Then you punch it in the equation. So the final part is simple. Calculate the percentage purity of iron 3 oxide, assuming the impurities did not react. So here the formula you have to know is percentage purity is equal to mass of a pure substance divided by mass of impure multiplied by 100. So in our question, what is the mass of the pure substance? So the mass of the pure substance is this mass we are from calculating, which is 3.2 grams. Then what is the mass of the impure? So the mass of the impure, they have given us in the question, which is 4 grams of impure iron oxide. So you say 4 multiplied by 100. Then you get your final answer to be 80% as your percentage purity. Yeah, so this question came last year, as you can see. So this is how you can handle a mole concept. Basically, when you have been given the volume and the concentration, this is how you can calculate the mass Yeah. So remember, it's not different. It's not different if they also give you to calculate the mass for iron sulfate. So it's just the same. You compare the number of moles. So how do you know now which element to use when you are comparing? So always use the element you have calculated the number of moles. For example, in our question, the number of moles we calculated was for what? Sulfuric. So you need to compare sulfuric and the element you're calculating. Yeah. So this is where my